things that are known but aren't really talked about enough is the first year of a new business, especially in trucking, the majority of these companies will fail. And if you do make it past the first year, you're going to be wearing a ton of hats and faced with an enormous challenge of keeping up with the big dogs out there. So, how do you avoid these common pitfalls of starting a new trucking business? And then, what solutions are there to help you once you get through the first year in order to manage it all effectively as you can? We're all wearing multiple hats. So, in today's show, we're going to be breaking down how to avoid those common pitfalls and with insight on the new tech to help you manage it all. Welcome into another episode of Cyberly. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve. And on this show, we talk about B2B marketing, the creator economy, the attention economy, and how it all fits into the world of logistics. And in today's show, we're going to be talking about the first of the month social media and marketing news, how recent updates will probably help shape the rest of your 2021 and 2022 budgets. And then we're also going to be chatting with Miles Varghese. He is the co-founder and CEO of Cargologik. And then we're also going to be chatting with Rahmel Wattley. He is the host and founder of the Truck and Hustle podcast. So it's a jam-packed show we got for you today. So let's go ahead and dive into the first topic. And that's the first of the month updates. This is going to be a new recurring segment on the Cyberly show where I'm going to break down the latest social media news, marketing news, and how it all really fits into your world and how you can effectively manage it all. Because it's really challenging to keep up with not only everything that's going on in the logistics world, but also to keep up with everything that's going on in the marketing world. I know firsthand how challenging that is. And so this is going to serve as a roundup of the latest news and how that will affect potentially your digital marketing plan moving forward, because it's really important in today's marketing world to remain agile and to jump on trends quickly and effectively, but not to overwhelm yourself with everything that's going on. And so with this segment, let's go ahead and dive into the first news update, and that is Facebook testing a huge update to the Instagram platform in order to keep up with TikTok. And you guessed it, it's another copycat feature. Adam Moresi, or Mosseri, that's actually how you say his name, is the head of Instagram. And he posted a video this week in which he announced that the Facebook owned app will focus on video. This probably broke the hearts of lots of photographers out there that have loved publishing their work as a static photo to the site, but that is changing because video is hot. It's remaining hot and it's going to be hot for the foreseeable future. And in Mosseri's talk, he mentioned a few interesting quotes that I'm going to translate for you. With first quote being, Instagram is prioritizing private messaging, e-commerce, and influencers instead of its original mainstay of friends posting photos in the feed, as he pointed to huge competition from TikTok. Now, translation of that statement means our discover page on Instagram is trash. We hate the chronological feeds, we meaning Instagram hates them, and they don't think you want to see the people you actually follow. So they're going to make it easier for you to follow the brands that they think are safe. The next quote that I thought was interesting is he said, social media companies are increasingly seeking to reposition themselves as destinations for entertainment or shopping, and which can be easier to monetize and less problematic in content moderation than individuals' personal posts, which a translation of that statement meaning content moderation is very hard and we don't know how to fix it. So here's a bunch of photos from companies that we think are safe and that will pay us money. So that's another big move that Instagram is making. They want to, if you're familiar with TikTok, you know that as soon as you open up the app, their first feed that they show you is your For You page. And that is their play off of Instagram's Discover page, which Instagram's Discover page is a hot mess. There's hardly anything on there that is of interest. It's more clickbaity. It's more feels like the bad ads that you see on a lot of news sites that are just trashy and kind of gross, like borderline gross. So that's really what Instagram's Discover page is versus TikTok, where their For You page, which is a kind of like a Discover page, is really showing you a lot of value. At least in my experience, it's showing you a lot of value. So that is the transition that Instagram is trying to make. I don't know how they're going to make it with their algorithm changes, but it's one of those things where they're trying to keep up. And instead of developing new features or focusing on the features that made them famous, like photos, they are instead just going to keep copycatting and see if something sticks. The final quote that I thought was probably the most, I guess, painful for the photographers out there is Masari said, "Video is driving an immense amount of growth online for all the major platforms right now, and it's one that I think we need to lean into more. We are no longer a photo sharing app." Which that last line is a direct shot at the plain old photos that you see on Instagram that are probably not, they're not going to be going away. They're still going to cater to photos. It's just they're not going to have a higher priority in the feed itself. So that translation is our users haven't gravitated towards IGTV and Instagram Reels like we had hoped. So we're just going to keep ripping off YouTube and TikTok until something sticks, because that's exactly what Instagram has been doing. Is they just, if they can't buy the company like they attempted to buy Snapchat, they'll just steal all of the features and create Instagram stories. If they can't buy TikTok or buy YouTube, which I mean, I don't know any company that could realistically, maybe Apple buy YouTube because they're just so massive and so valuable. But it's one of those things where you see these shifts that these social media networks are making. And how do you pivot? How do you use those strategies in your content marketing plan and your content distribution plan in order to create more brand awareness and ultimately help turn those visiting eyeballs into customers? So the key takeaways I would say are e-commerce is the future for Instagram, whether they're prioritizing reels, photos, or showing an ad after every 3 posts. But shopping on Instagram is probably one of their strengths. I know that when I make a purchase on social media, it's usually through Instagram, and it's usually because I've seen the same ad 5 or 6 times and I say, okay, finally I need to get this so I can just either A, get rid of the ad or hide it, or it's serving me that ad because I've shown interest in that brand before. So I try to pay attention to the things that make me convert on social media, and then using those, studying those ads, and you can then take that insight. It's anecdotal, but you can take that anecdotal insight and then you can apply it to other ways that you hopefully you can help other people make that buying decision. So e-commerce is obviously a big push for Instagram. It is for the other social media apps, but I would say that TikTok and Instagram do it by far the best right now, because I can't tell you also how many times I've been on TikTok and I've seen somebody review an Amazon product or unbox it, and I go right to Amazon and I add that thing to my cart. So e-commerce is obviously the future for not just Instagram, but for all social media apps. But I definitely see that being a primary focus for Instagram in the future. So you can either, you could probably, knowing this news, you can exploit sort of Instagram's strategy and use it to your advantage, because their desire is to continue to sell and to continue to get these eyeballs on different products and posts and keep that attention on their platform. So knowing that, you can use that to your advantage and use it to your advantage within your marketing strategies. Now, you need to also be thinking of ways to incorporate short form video into your marketing plans. We covered this on the very first episode of Cyberly, where short form video is here to stay. Go watch that video. It's in the YouTube playlist on the FreightWaves channel. First video in the feed. As soon as you click on the playlist, you'll be able to watch it, because short form video is here to stay. And with Instagram putting a greater focus on vertical video, not necessarily horizontal video. They want more vertical video, because if you think about it, let's use my phone as an example. So if you're on your mobile device, if you're looking at your phone, look at all this real estate that a vertical video takes over. If you're looking at a horizontal video, it's only going to be a portion of that video that, or a portion of the screen that the video takes up. So from a marketing lens, you want to think of it, how much digital real estate can I take up? And vertical video is the answer. Now you can take other videos, other horizontal videos, and you can convert them into a vertical video or a vertical style video. I've also seen people use horizontal video and they just add text. I've done it myself, where they'll take a horizontal video and then they'll add text to the top and maybe captions at the bottom, and boom, you have a vertical video. So those are instances of where you can take your strategy of the pillar content that you are creating and then turn it into these different formats on these different channels that these other channels are prioritizing. So just keep that in mind, that vertical video definitely has, obviously it has more real estate. And if your video is 3 minutes or under, you can upload it to TikTok. And if it's under a minute, you can upload it to YouTube Shorts, which YouTube Shorts is the number one way that I'm getting subscribers right now. Other creators that I follow, they're getting subscribers as well, simply because they're prioritizing YouTube Shorts, which is a video under a minute, while TikTok is now 3 minutes. And yes, 3 minutes, because just last week, TikTok allowed all users. Usually they roll this out in batches, but for TikTok they rolled it out for everyone, or I would say 90% of creators on the platform. Now all everybody has access to upload up to 3-minute long videos in the app. And so that is something new that just came out down the pipeline. And so if you're curious about TikTok, if you're curious about jumping on some of these newer platforms, which TikTok has been around for a few years now, so they're not necessarily new, but they are one of the top downloaded apps and have been so for probably the past year, year and a half, especially during COVID, where TikTok just blew up. But there are more and more logistics brands that are joining TikTok. And I found a few of my favorites that I followed for a little while. And maybe if you've watched the show before, you have seen them too. But let me pull up the first one. The first one is NFI. They have been on TikTok for a while. And this is an example of one of their recruiting videos. They also cover company history, they cover driver safety, workplace culture, all kinds of things. And this is a traditional logistic, I would say a traditional logistics company that's using their marketing messaging and they're translating it to a new platform. Now, that video, they can take that video and then put it up on YouTube Shorts. They can also add it to Instagram and IGTV, technically, or Instagram Reels. They can add it both to there. So you start with one piece of content and then see how you can distribute it out to the other platforms. That makes sense. The next one on the list that I really love following, and she just started her new account, is Logistox.
Brokers like to try. First one. Hey, you're calling about New Jersey to Illinois? Yeah, I mean, I had 4 of these. Looks like this one's the last one left. Yeah, I gotta be at 1,200 on this one. What's that? Okay, you have it covered? Oh, hold on 1 second. Hey, sorry, sir. Yeah, I mean, I can get this load for you. Someone else is trying to grab it, but the best I can do is a 1,200. Do you want this one? 15?
See,
yeah, I don't. It looks like there's already an offer in there for 15, and they just turned it down. So probably the best I can do is a 14 on it.
See, now that is a great example of just taking workplace culture and adding it into your own with your own spin on it and adding it to a social media account. She's already garnered thousands of followers already just talking about working at a freight or working as a freight broker. So that's another really good one to follow and a good example of how to get some inspiration for your own channel. The next one, if you watched the show before, you have seen his videos, but I'm going to promote him again because I think his videos are just fantastic. This is Trucker Wazir.
Officially been trucking for 1 year. Oh, yeah. Yeah, my boy. Okay. After 1 full year of truck driving, let's go over my expectations versus my reality. Expectation, I'm definitely gonna get rich. Reality is, any money trouble I did have, it's now fixed, and I don't have to stress about paying any bills anymore. So I got a little money, but not a lot of money. Expectation, this is super complicated. I can never figure out how to do this job. Reality, with enough training and time, this human brain, this one right here, even with all the screws loose, you learn anything. Expectation, 8 weeks, 2 months on the road, I'm gonna miss my family. Reality, I don't even like my family that much. You don't love his family, your family, bro? I'm playing. I love my family, I love my friends, so the time I spend with them now, I value even more.
What a great, this man is a one-man recruiting machine, because if you check the comments on a lot of his posts, there are people who are actively saying, I want to be a truck driver. Where can I learn more? Or you're making me want to become a truck driver. If I'm a recruiter, I'm checking the comments of his posts and I'm going there and I'm contacting every single person that has expressed interest in learning about truck driving. He's a one-man recruiting machine with some of the best trucking content on TikTok and really on any social media platform. So I can't sing the praises of him enough. The final one that I want to show you guys is Rai Shararsky. I'm butchering his last name, but this is beautiful. He's a creative photographer, obviously, because he takes such stunning footage. But this is another person that should be hired as a creative director at a big logistics firm. And if you don't hire him, just pay him for his photography and his video work because it's hands down some of the best in the industry, if not the best. It's you can tell he has an eye for visuals, an eye for the camera, and it's one of those things that I think that there aren't enough companies that are taking the creative approach, especially when it comes to the photos and the videos that you show off on your social media profiles and on your website. And so these are different. Those four accounts should be the perfect illustration of how you can take your position and then move it into a creative view or even a funny view or a meme type view, just showing your company off, showing off your knowledge or showing off your skills that are outside traditionally of trucking or of any other aspect of the logistics industry. Those four accounts are amazing, and I highly recommend to give them a follow. So using all of this inspiration and using all of this news, what are the takeaway lessons? You're going to use this news in order to format the rest of your 2021 plans, because the rest of your 2021 plans are the only time that you're really going to be able to experiment and see if some of these things are working for you and your company. If you're a one person marketing show, you're going to want to pick two, maybe three of these social media accounts or really just mediums that you want to dive into. And you want to start with video, because video can then be turned into audio and it can be turned into photos, and it can also be turned into graphics that you use across all of your social media accounts. But starting with video first and then incorporating that into your distribution strategy will help you experiment, because the next holiday that's coming up is Halloween. And then before you know it, it's the holidays and New Year's goals. And it's also going to be budgeting season. And for budgeting season, if you have a marketing budget set aside, you're going to have to be able to justify what you spent in 2021 and how you project that budget is going to change in 2022. So start experimenting using this news and using some of these strategies that we've talked throughout all of our episodes. You can go back and watch them if you want. We got it linked in the comments where you can find the rest of the episodes, but start experimenting with the rest of 2021, the rest of this year, and that will lead into your budgeting for 2022 and how you're going to spend your time and how you're going to spend your energy. Now, let's go into our next guest, because he has a really good experience on social media. And so let's go ahead and bring in Miles Varghese. He is the co-founder and CEO of Cargologik. Welcome in, Miles.
Hey, thanks for having me, Blythe. Long time. Really
Right.
appreciate it. Been following you for a minute now, and excited to be on. Thanks for having me and having us.
Likewise, very much enjoying watching your rise to success. But for those who don't know about your career and your background, how did you get into the world of logistics?
So I got into logistics just by kind of happenstance. I feel like logistics kind of called to me. I started off in the tech community here in Miami around 2014. There wasn't much happening back then, but kind of bounced around between a couple of different tech companies, and eventually got into a company called Octopi, which is a company that we ended up bootstrapping here in Miami. And one of the investors in the first startup I was a part of, a company called Live Ninja, referred me over to my co-founders at that venture, where I spent the next little over 2 years, and we ended up getting acquired. But that first port terminal startup, Octopi, was focused on port terminal operating systems. So we just kind of got immediately exposed to large terminal operators, shipping lines, the technology scene, around it, of course. And it was also good timing in the sense that a lot of the incubators and accelerators, I would say globally, were coming up into the space, and I would still say it's early days. So just kind of a little bit of luck, by design. Just got into this scene and found out that 90% of everything comes through a container. And then got hooked, and that Octopi journey was a good one through acquisition. And now I'm here on this next venture in the co-founding role at Cargologik.
And now you mentioned that you're based in Miami, which for folks who don't know, I mean, obviously over the last year, there's sort of been an explosion in talent that has come from across the globe, really, primarily, I would say, across the US, and now moving over to Miami. What has that experience been like to watch the shift, I guess, from a national perspective of how people have been flocking to Miami from other states in order to really take advantage of the tech scene that is going crazy down there?
It's almost surreal because, if you're in the tech scene, you always kind of look at Silicon Valley and some of these top tier tech hubs as what you want to be, what you want your community to be. These people have access to investors, VCs, angels. You just assume things, come easier for them. And being in Miami before like this wave happened, the mentality of the great startups here in Miami, I feel like the momentum has been building over time, was just to hustle and to work really hard. And it just means that you have to compete with folks that may have easier access to prospects or to funding. So to kind of see it shift and change to something that's probably more equilibrial to like, equal to Silicon Valley has been really cool. So you're starting to get invited through Twitter. Folks are just tagging you when VCs are coming down. There's a legitimate interest both at the angel and the VC level, especially into this space. So that's been really cool to kind of see. But overall, Miami's quickly morphing. Thanks to Mayor Suarez, and now there's an entire like formal Venture Miami team. So basically, a portion of the government devoted towards the act of attracting these tech companies and facilitating innovation. Thanks to the new mayor, has really driven a massive influx, as you mentioned, and it's definitely leveling up our tech. Our tech skills, right? It's definitely leveling up the quality of caliber and the people that we have in here, but also bringing in more liquidity, more capital, more private funds, more VCs, more partners, more corporate partners as well, and even enterprise customers, especially with Miami being the hub of logistics for LATAM. That's all kind of evolved and come on pretty quickly. So it's been a really fun experience and cool to see things getting a little bit easier. Of course, a little more commoditized, a little more challenging. But definitely it's becoming easier, I would say, to launch a venture here, to raise capital and to find talent.
Yeah, the mayor has been all over Twitter, which has been fascinating to watch because he's really I would say the most famous mayor on Twitter. So that's been great. He's like a one-man recruiting machine. Now, has that talent that has been coming to the city, has that spilled over into logistics at all? Or are you seeing any kind of correlations between the tech and logistics side of things?
Definitely. I mean, Pay Cargo was the most recent massive sort of liquidity and investment event that happened, where they just cut a deal with Fiata. They raised a couple $100 million. Shipmonk is down here. There's a lot of great warehousing space and things like that. So I would definitely say that the logistics scene is absolutely seeing a positive shift. And even beyond that, being a member of the economic development arm and sitting on the trade and logistics committee at the Beacon Council, which is Miami-Dade's, EDO, it's been cool to see because there is a talent like development pipeline, so there are folks, that have been before this technology rush devoted to structurally building a tech, and not only a tech, but even just a pure talent pipeline, into warehousing, into trucking. And so that's been kind of coming along. And I think that now with this larger influx and of course, cool tech startups, showing up for logistics, it's definitely having an impact. And we're starting to see more folks kind of get into logistics. But that's not to say that, Miami is immune to the current challenges that we see in the supply chain. It's very hard to retain people right now. It's very hard still to find new labor, as I think it is for everywhere. You probably know better than me, but it seems to be an ongoing challenge, but there has always been a devoted group of folks, baked into the government, into the local community, the private community, the public sector, to drive more internships, to drive, and we're taking one right now through Miami-Dade County Public Schools. But there's a structural drive, to even get startups and like ourselves involved at an early stage. So definitely seeing a good, nice, I would say the start of a strong shift into logistics at scale.
Well, speaking of that shift of people that are coming to the city of Miami, a lot of people came earlier in the year when temperatures are nice, the humidity isn't as bad. How are those folks dealing with July in Florida with the heat, humidity? We just had the first hurricane go to the state. Is everybody flocking back to their home state, or are they staying put?
Yeah. So just like probably up there and in northern Florida, same thing. Here, it's definitely getting hot. It's definitely getting humid. The mosquitoes are coming out. But I've been pleasantly surprised talking to some of this new wave of talent that have come into the scene from all over, from San Francisco, Austin, New York, and they seem surprisingly unfazed. But one of my new buddies from San Francisco who moved into town said that's what low tax rate and great cafecito, great Cuban coffee will do. So it seems like it's not having a massive impact, surprisingly. Of course, some people are going back to New York, but it does seem like there's an intention to come back or to split time. And I've even heard of some pretty influential folks up in Freight Alley, kind of coming down and spending, at least 6 months of the year here in Miami. And you're starting to see that and bumping into supply chain players almost organically now. But definitely they seem to be staying strong, at least for now. And I think with the storms and the hurricanes and all the rain, it's been maybe a little bit cooler. So maybe it hasn't been the ultimate representation of a Miami summer or, South Florida, Florida summer. But seems like they're not running away as fast as we thought they would.
Just wait until August. That'll be the
Yeah,
true
right. We'll
test.
see.
For,
We'll see.
that'll be the true test. Just I guess keep in mind with the hurricanes to throw a party for anything that's a category 2 or under. That's what a true Floridian would do. And always keep bug spray on you. Those are my 2 tips. Now,
Yeah,
you mentioned.
and
Oh,
only
go
grab
ahead.
water, like the night before, and get gas like maybe the day it's coming. That's usually how we roll.
Right. Yeah, because then anything else, it's like, all right, well, you're gonna have to actually evacuate if it's a category 3 or even higher for most places, and so then you'll just take care of your supplies when you're on the road. So
Exactly. There you go.
there's your there's your hurricane handy book from Miles and Blythe. Now, you mentioned a lot of VC funding and from that aspect of the side of the coin, and I'm someone who's very naive to how VC funding, angel investing all works. Can you break down how the idea for Cargologik came about and where VC fits into all of this?
Absolutely. So with regard to venture capitalists and angels, right, the idea at a high level is that these players that have a ton of capital, preferably expertise, you usually want someone who's been in the industry, who's operating a business, who's got some technical chops or some connections. You usually want to find someone, especially in our space, in our niche, where everything is so focused on relationships. So you normally want to find these players that are looking to make these types of bets. And to put them into companies, right? And now we're starting to see, like more money flowing and skewing even towards the earlier stage seed companies. So I would say now, especially for freight forwarding and shipping, is a fantastic time, to kind of be, in this space. And the reason why I would say that that this play is kind of happening now is that because the acceleration of e-commerce. COVID, right? The silver lining, everyone's buying things from home and the supply chain, of course, is in flux. And as a result, these VCs and angels are looking for, okay, I've invested in some e-commerce startups, what's the next thing, tied to e-commerce, right? What's the derivative of e-commerce? And that is supply chain, right? And freight forwarding brokerage. And so you're starting to see a lot more attention being paid into this space. And as for Cargologik, the venture itself was founded in 2019. I joined my co-founder when they just had mock-ups, so I'll give myself some credit for that. But I joined the team a couple months after they started building the application in the summer of 2019. And Luis Trujillo Jr., who's my co-founder in the venture, he belongs to a shipping family. So there's his father is really active investor, Luis Fernando Trujillo Sr., and he's also one of the biggest investors in our company, along with Rocker Labs, which is the office that I'm in, this co-working digital venture company based in Miami. So Luis, my co-founder, saw an opportunity being digital native, just operating on and seeing how Amazon works. Just seeing that, hey, there's probably a better way where we can facilitate how freight forwarders, especially the smaller ones, which his family owns one of those companies in Guayaquil. In Ecuador, can do business with their customers, right? There's just a better way to just kind of digitize basic operations, and that's kind of how we got started, and it started with a seed investment from Luis's family, so particularly his shipping holding company, a company called Grupo Holco, and Rocker Labs here in Miami, and then some more angels got involved, including our own employees too, which is really cool. And since then, right, the idea is, raise capital, build, listen to the market more than anything. And then you want to take that capital that people are taking a gamble on you. And then you want to just show proof, right? Just say, hey, like, this is what I told you I was going to do. I've acquired X number of customers. I've generated this MRR. And even if, you don't have a massive amount of revenue now these days, venture capitalists and the right angels, if you're able to find them, of course, you'll pitch over 100 times. But if you find the right people that understand your business and your model, a lot of them will take that early bet on you and help you grow and scale through their relationships.
I love that. It's definitely it's more of investing in the idea of the product initially, and then you got to start showing your proof, and you do that by listening to your customers, which is key. I love that aspect. Now, switching gears to the customer side of things, you spoke about the importance of independent freight forwarders, brokers, and other LSPs in the industry. What signifies an indie player, and what keeps them up at night that Cargo Logic is hoping to solve?
Great question, right? So for the indie players that we refer to, so for us, we're a freight collaboration and communication platform, and like we're talking about here, we're aimed at these small to medium independent freight forwarders and brokers, and generally these are to kind of classify them, these are folks that have probably been in business for 10 or 15 years. It could also be like a newer company that's just starting up, and they don't need a massive cargo operating system or anything expensive really to run their operations. But at the end of the day, when you're a smaller player, you're usually not having the budget, right? You don't have the same tech budget, the innovation teams that DHL, FedEx, Kuhn and Nagel have. You can't probably not, you're probably not going to be able to compete with Flexport and build, freight marketplaces, right? And even if you use those systems as a smaller player, sometimes, there's a trade-off that happens between the revenue that you generate and also your long-term differentiation. And then the last piece I would say that these smaller logistics service providers have to deal with is they also are worried about the liners that they've historically been in business with, right, for the last 10, 15, 50 years, building their own systems, right? So now CMA CGM, right, has their own direct booking systems, Maersk Spot, Maersk Twill, like all these platforms exist now where you can directly go and book cargo. And so these independent freight forwarders that have been around for a long time are seeing, these former partners, new tech entrants, and they don't have the budget to build software and to build technology. And so what they're seeing is really, really tough margins, right? And I think everyone in our space is familiar with that. As low as $50 a box. We've talked to independent players that actually have no idea that if they're profitable or not. So our goal really is to kind of help them with that and to get a better idea of which accounts they should pay attention to, which ones they don't, and then kind of simplifying their day. So for us, we're trying to help these smaller players and especially these commercial teams, instead of balancing out 10, 12 customers in their head, pen, paper, Excel, maybe an old TMS and a couple other systems that aren't integrated, to give them a more proper customer facing solution that they can extend to their customers. And it's almost like an Amazon logistics timeline meets a DHL tracking number, I would say is like our first step in for like the commercial, for the commercial teams. And that's where we get started. And from there, we just kind of build this system that creates alerts between both parties, lets them know and spin up their own logistics timelines, post updates to them. Their customers can see them, hit refresh. So they're no longer texting, hey, where's my cargo? 4 or 5 times a day, or, has that form been cleared? And that's, the type of things that are keeping up these independent players at night. It's really basic operations. And they're really, for such a massive market, there hasn't been a significant amount of tools, especially in the small to medium sector, that are fitting the bill. And I think with the advancements of web-based technology and the precedent that's been set by like companies like Slack, HubSpot, Box, where you can kind of come in like, hey, try us out for free. I think that's been changing the game a bit. But those are usually the bigger things that's been keeping up our target market and these independent freight forwarders and brokers around the world.
Now, you mentioned with a lot of them that they've been in business for 10 or 15 years, and technology is increasingly becoming a must, not a want. And so for these companies that are trying to tread water and then also invest in these newer technologies, how are you sort of easing that tech phobia burden for them?
Great question. For us, right, and speaking from like a technical perspective, we know that our, the technical term is called time to value. So what is like the one thing that someone does when they interact with your software, and what's like the easiest thing that you can like convince them to take a step into your software and to sign up and to try it out? That's the hardest part, right? Because I think this industry is really premised upon relationships. Folks are afraid of technology, and not because they're scared of it, but usually they have that "it ain't broke, don't fix it" type mentality. I think that is rapidly shifting. But for us, knowing that when you start tracking your cargo, that's when the magic starts happening. So for us, like once you start putting in, a master bill of lading into the system, once you get to like 4 or 5 in there and you start seeing these beautiful logistics timelines, populating that you can copy and paste, like a DHL tracking number or Amazon timeline, and you start sending them to your customers, that's when things start getting a little more interesting. And then they start seeing that, okay, not only do I get the self-populating logistics timeline, but I also have my documents that are stored here. So I'm not searching for my Google Drive, your Dropbox, for key, customs clearance forms, documents, proofs of insurance, purchase orders, invoices, all sorts of things like that. All those things are usually fractured on both sides. You're sending 30 to 50 emails, per container. So what for us, the key is really to just get that first step in. So before we hammer you and throw, hey, you also have quoting booking support. You also have communication, in here where we can replace WhatsApp and WeChat. And before all of that, the hardest thing is just to get your foot in the door. And for us, the way that we've been able to do that was, saying, hey, your first 10 master bills of lading in Cargologik are completely free. There's no charge. There's no time box for it. So you literally can go in, anyone can go in, no credit card, 2 screens, sign up for the system, and then get their feet wet, see that logistics timeline, send it to the customer. And when that customer comes back, say, hey, this is really cool. I never saw that you could do this before. It'll slowly become, a standard procedure. And then the idea is that customer will join you. So just like Slack or Microsoft Teams, when that customer is ready, they're not being forced to, but if that customer wants to join you on the platform, because again, we're not trying to force anyone to create another login or password. They're going to forget anyways. The idea is we can softly pull them into the platform. And this is kind of like the modern way to kind of do it these days. Product-led growth, is sort of the technical term for that as well. But building out a system that's open enough to pull people in, that's easy to use, and that they're going to be willing to give their time to it and also share it with their customers. And once that customer joins them, that's when the application becomes much more stickier. And then we start seeing success with our customers. But that's kind of been our strategy and probably the number one thing. It's really about, can you convince someone in this industry who's very wary and looking over their shoulder often a lot, very commoditized space, can you convince them enough to give you a shot and to get that first step in the door? Because once you can do that, you can kind of prove to them that you can do everything else for them and improve their experience.
I love that. Don't overwhelm them. Show them the value first on a complimentary basis, and then start adding in those extra things. Because I feel like with tech, it's so easy to become overwhelmed. But if you can save somebody some time, then they're more than likely to invest that extra time into learning more about your platform. So I love that approach. Now, switching gears a little bit. Speaking of social media, as we talked about earlier in the show, you are very active on Twitter. You write a great newsletter up on LinkedIn. But I wanted to go ahead and bring up one of your tweets because this was kind of news to me. And the tweet asked, anyone in supply
Oh,
chain
no.
or Miami Tech Network play CODM, which is an acronym for Call of Duty on mobile. You said you need a battle partner going into the 3rd week of this global championship. Is this some kind of a secret logistics gaming network that you're part of?
I think it might be. We got, I wasn't able to sadly, I wasn't able to secure any tech CEOs who were focused on logistics. So that'll be the next play. So, if any of your viewers are out there, I'm down to play, with them. But my wife's not super happy about it, of course, nor is my dog, I don't think. But got pretty competitive, I guess, with it. And it's just like a game you play on the phone. It's been a good, source of just stress relief, after a hard call or, a long day of Zoom calls, right? Or podcasting, you just want to kind of disconnect a bit. It's been good, so I am recruiting logistics professionals and players that I can probably, play with. But there is like a global, championship running and they force you, which has also been cool, right? Because it's also kind of very relationship based. It forces you to kind of step out of your comfort zone. It's like saying that, you've been playing with these people, but you actually now have to go find people and then connect with them, build a relationship, add them to your team, and then compete to continue competing with this global challenge thing that Call of Duty's run.
It's just all a form of networking. That's all. You can just bill it as that.
Relationship.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Relationship building and networking.
All
right. Final question for you. What's next for Cargologik, and where can people follow more of your work?
Thank you, Blythe. So next up for Cargologik, we're just going to keep our heads down and to continue executing. We're fortunate enough to have, over 200 customers on the platform, and what's really cool, across 150 countries. And I think that's pretty significant too, because that means that we're building a globally configurable system. And we spent a lot of last year just talking to the customer. We've had hundreds of conversations, and now going forward, it's just a matter of continuing to listen, getting folks, willing to take a look at our system, giving us a shot, and then maybe having a 20, 30-minute call with them. But eventually we're moving into, the sort of model that you see at HubSpot, right? Or Slack or any of these freemium sort of solutions where basically, give us a shot, try it out. If you like it, keep using it, invite your friends. And that's what we're going to continue focusing on: activation, engagement, and then also improving the shipper experience, right? Because it's a two-side facing application for the second half of this year and then into next year.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I love what you said about getting closer to the customer, because whoever gets closest to the customer wins. So thank you so much for your time, Miles. And we'll be sure to link to all of Cargologic's projects and social media platforms in the show notes. So thank you again, Miles.
Thanks, Blake.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our next guest. Super pumped to talk to him. It's Rahmel Wattley. He is the podcast host and creator of Truck and Hustle. It is a great, fantastic show that you can find in podcast format and on YouTube. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Welcome to the show.
Blythe, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited
nice
to finally talk to you.
Nice to virtually meet.
Yes, I've been following your work for a while, big fan. So I was super pumped when you said you agreed to come on the show. So for folks who aren't aware of your platform, Truck and Hustle, give us a little bit of a breakdown of what the podcast covers and how you started it.
Yeah, so to just give a breakdown of what Truck and Hustle is, Truck and Hustle started out as a podcast. It's also a community. Basically, what we do there is we interview the I like to say the dopest and the greatest and the best minds in transportation, transportation entrepreneurs. We cover different niches, everything from the administrative, where you'll have like freight brokerage and dispatch, all the way to the guys who get their hands dirty. The fleet owners, car haulers, dump trucks. We just like to bring awareness to the transportation industry as a whole. And we like to inspire and as well as inform people, just to bring awareness, man, to let people know what's going on in this industry. And that's what the goal and the mission of the show is. In terms of how we got started, the podcast actually got started about 2 years ago now, July 2019. I was just I had some time on my hands and I was just looking for something to do, like a passion project. I love podcasting. I love the podcast medium. I think it's like one of the best mediums out there in terms of really having an intimate engagement with your audience. And I've been a podcast fan myself for probably the last 10 years. But typically when I listen to podcasts, I'd always listen to like stuff about real estate or e-commerce or other things that I had interest in. Myself, I've been in the transportation industry for almost 20 years. Since the early 2000s. And I'm also an entrepreneur in transportation. I've also worked in corporate for many large carriers. So when I was thinking about this podcasting thing, I was like, I would love to do a podcast one day, but what would I do it on? And just one day the thought hit me, you've been in transportation for so long. Why don't you do a trucking podcast? And, when I kind of did my research to see what was out there were some other platforms that were out there, but I didn't really feel as though they were talking to me. And I wanted to create something that would resonate with myself and create like a culture, around it. So I wanted to do something new, something fresh, and something interesting. And that's kind of where the inception of Truck and Hustle began. I started reaching out to friends first, people who I knew from the community and people who I've known through my journey. And then I just started reaching out to strangers and just, telling these amazing stories of these entrepreneurs from all across the nation, who've come from different backgrounds, and have had, different paths and experiences, and just telling their stories and informing people and also informing on how they created their businesses and showing that, the opportunity is there. It's tangible and it could be done and anybody could do it if you have the right education and the right drive. And that's kind of like the short story. I hope I didn't take up too much time.
No, I love it because you just knocked out like 3 questions that I had on my list. So we're good.
I tend to do that. I can tend to be a little bit wordy. I don't ever really get a chance to talk on my own podcast. So when I have an opportunity to talk, I have to vent. Like, you know what I mean? I got to vent.
You got to seize the opportunity.
I got to seize the moment.
No, I was looking at your website yesterday, and you say that the primary goal is to provide quality information on how to nourish and flourish your trucking company because most won't make it past a year. When you're talking and you're out there sharing knowledge and talking to other entrepreneurs out in the industry, what are some of the common ways that you're seeing folks fail at first, and how can they avoid those mistakes?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for failure in business specifically, in business in general, and in trucking specifically. As we all know, trucking is extremely cash intensive. So a lot of times people just run out of money, right? They don't have the proper safety net or the safety nets to get started. As we all know, a engine could, a blown engine could put you out of business really fast in transportation. A lot of times it's just poor management, not really having the right team of people around you, not having the proper business plan, and just not really knowing what you're getting into. 2020 with the pandemic, it kind of made trucking sexy. To where people started seeing like there's all these opportunities because when everything shut down, the wheels, those 18 wheels kept on rolling. So it made a
Mhm.
lot of people interested in this industry, and a lot of people started to dive into it. But a lot of people got into it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they just thought it was a fad or thought it was something that they could just throw money at. And in the industry, it's not something that you could just throw money at because eventually the money will run out if you don't have those fundamentals in place. At some point it's going to catch up to you. So I think that's the main things. A lot of times it's money, poor planning, not having a business plan, or just not having the proper education or the proper resources, in order to continue to get past that 1 to 2 year mark. And just not having a lot of the right relationships. A lot of times, we go into this not really knowing much, especially if you're fresh and you don't come from the industry. You don't have those relationships, so you have to build those relationships as you go along. And everybody is not able to make it happen in that way. So I think those are some of the things that causes some of the demise of some of these new upstarts.
Now, with your platform, you're very vigilant about sharing industry knowledge, and the way you do so is you're conducting video first interviews. A lot of the times, I think the majority of the time, you're doing these interviews on site. You're doing them in a warehouse. You're doing them on location in the truck yard. You're inside, somebody's office, and I love that because I feel like you get so much more out of the interview when you do them in person. Why was it important for you to do a lot of these interviews in person and on site?
Yeah, so for a couple of reasons, and some of them you just now mentioned. Number one, it doesn't get any more intimate than sitting, right in front of a person and really, they really tend to bare their soul when they're right there. First of all, you have an opportunity to connect with them, on a personal level before the show. So, when you do things virtually, a lot of times you don't have that, half an hour or so to really get to know the person at first. When I do my shows, when I did a lot of virtual shows, I would try to get that time, and we usually have a conversation. I would kind of vet people and just kind of get understanding of their business, their goals, and so forth and so on. But when you're in person, it's just nothing like that. Nothing like it. You really get to feel that person out, and then once you go into the actual interview, there's just another comfort level. Now there are some negatives to that. Some people aren't used to talking in front of the camera, so you have to make them comfortable because there's all these lights shining on them for like the first time, and they're like a movie star all of a sudden. But but
They
once they
start
get
asking for
past that
autographs.
and we start talking, it's like they forget the lights, they go away, and then all of a sudden we're just having a really good conversation. And I just feel, it's just the best way to get the most out of people and treasure hunt. I like to call it treasure hunting. Like what we do is we treasure hunt. We're looking for those hidden buried treasures inside of people because I feel we all have them. But as interviewers, we just have to ask the right questions in order to dig them out. You know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, in addition to going visual, it's just about reach. The podcasting platform is a great platform as far as intimacy and as far as really having that core audience. But in order to get reach and to get the word out, there's still people who don't even know what a podcast is, right? There's still people you say I have a podcast and they're like, what's that? They don't know that there's a preloaded app in your phone for podcasting that has, hundreds of thousands of podcasts readily available for you. So because of that, because there's still that barrier, you have to go where the people are at. So I felt that it was important to become visual and go on YouTube where you have 5 billion people. And now, it's based on search intent. So now people are typing and searching things and they're falling upon your content and they can discover you more. And obviously, the whole goal is to have more reach and to have people discover the show and to have people discover the message. And that's the goal. So I felt by going visual, it would kind of 10x the reach and get us to a place to where now people are just discovering the show. And also people who are not necessarily niched in just transportation, because we're trying to bring people into the industry. As you see, there's a huge disparity with drivers. We have a huge driver shortage. We need people in this industry to keep it going and to keep it thriving. So, in order to reach people who aren't necessarily thinking about the industry, you have to go where they're at. So I felt that adding that visual component was really important in doing so. And obviously you have to invest a little bit more. You have to have a team, you have to travel, hotels, and all that. But I enjoy it. And so far it's been yielding some pretty nice benefits and returns in terms of engagement and so forth and so on.
I love that because you've obviously been doing all the right things because you're speaking of the visuals, you're speaking of discovery and getting that additional reach. What does that once you wrap an interview, what does that post production look like for you? Do you have a team of people editing it? Are you in the trenches editing it yourself and sending it out to social media platforms? How are you managing all of it?
Yeah, so I have a small team. I have about two cameramen that I work with intimately all the time. One of my camera guys is a best friend of mine from childhood. Another one is a guy who I met several years ago, a young kid by the name of Chris Forever Rails, and my other guy Kwaku Kingnabi. I'll just plug them real quick if anybody needs camera people. Um, yeah, so that's in terms of the actual footage. Now they also do the edits as well, and then I have a virtual team that I work with as well for edits and helping me post content. I mean, the team is the most important thing in order for growth. You know what I mean? Because you can't do it all yourself, especially as a creative. You have to focus on securing the guests, and you have to focus on, like the narrative and how you want the show to go and how you want things to roll out, because you're like the CEO of this project and this offering. So you'd want to kind of take your mind off of the actual execution of creating the content. So at first, when I got started, I did a lot of that myself. I have a little bit of like very small skills in like, in like mixing and editing shows and stuff like that. So I would do it, just the audio portion. But when it came to the video, I had no idea about that. So I had to definitely, get out the way and let the professionals handle that. But yeah, that's pretty much how we do it. We have a pretty small team. I probably work with about 4 to 5 people, and that team is fairly new in terms of just growth now, because now we're working on the growth portion. The last 2 years, we've just been working on building our audience organically and just building that trust and just showing that we're, just really a source that can be trusted, and just that word of mouth is how we've grown. But now, as we've grown, had that traction, now it's time to kind of step it up and get some more visibility. We want to be out there like FreightWaves. We want to be out there with you guys.
No, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job. So I'm sitting here and I want to like be taking notes off to the side, because what you said about you can't be the one actually editing it too. And I handle the editing for a lot of my different shows, and it's exhausting. So I'm gonna be taking some notes off to the side.
It's an investment, obviously, but it's worth it, and you'll see that in just the quality of the way things come out, and just timing and so forth. And I mean, it's difficult to even work with the team, because now you're managing a team and now you have to kind of get your thoughts inside of them. So, I mean, it's like you're so used to doing things on your own and it's like all in your head. So now when you have a team, you're trying to communicate those thoughts to them. So it's a process, and I'm still going through that process. We're still very new and very young at what we're doing, and we're growing, and we're just getting better every day. So, that's pretty much it.
With all the people that you've interviewed and you've talked to, do you have a favorite story that has come from that?
There is so many stories, and I've been asked this question a few times. Um, you know, There's so many stories. I mean, I love to see just people who come from, you know, uh, either impoverished conditions or just challenging situations, come from, being imprisoned, or, come from situations to where it just look like, you know, they just had such a slim shot at winning, and just really being able to turn that around and just create these businesses. And they don't always have to be the biggest businesses, they can be small businesses. But it's just really inspiring to see people from all different walks of life just be able to just have the drive and motivation and that go-getter spirit and mentality to just make it happen, and just in a lot of cases not even know what they're getting into, but they just find their way. So all those stories kind of really just inspire me. I love the underdog story. I love Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe not 5 so much, but I love the underdog story. I love to see people come from nothing and turn it into something.
Mm,
You know, that
I love
really
that.
resonates with me. So anytime I see a story like that, it's awesome to me. So I'd say those are like kind of like my favorite stories, and I think those are the most inspiring stories, because we have a lot of people out there, who are down on their luck, and they feel like, they don't have opportunities, or they can't do it. And when they see people like that make it happen, it changes the whole trajectory of people's life in some cases, and that's inspiring to me. When I get direct messages and emails saying, you literally, not me, but they'll say me, but it's not me. It's all of us. It's the collective. The show has literally changed my life. When I heard
Mm,
this person, or I heard this story, it literally made me start my business, and now I have a government contract that's worth $2 million. Or I,
wow.
I mean, it gets no better than that. So that has become my purpose, and I just love to see those messages. I get them all the time, and all I can say is, man, congratulations. I love it, and just do me a favor, don't stop.
I love that. That, and nothing helps us connect with somebody else more than realizing the struggle and breaking through that struggle and rising to the top. It's been
Absolutely.
incredible to watch a lot of the different and listen to a lot of the different stories that you've been putting out, because it's really inspiring work. And
Thank
where
you.
you promote a lot of your stories is through Instagram. And I saw a post the other day that said you were leaving Instagram and Twitter and you were going to LinkedIn. Is that now?
Yeah,
Is that for
yeah,
real?
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you going to
So,
LinkedIn
so
or?
I actually, so it's funny when I put that post up, people started asking me, "Well, what's your LinkedIn name gonna be?" I've been on LinkedIn forever, first of all, right? So it's like nothing's really changing here. I told people that I'll be Airbnb-ing my Instagram, so anybody who wants to take over it, feel free. But no, that post was just simply, every platform is different in terms of the way we communicate, and Instagram tends to get a bit messy at times. And it just seems when I'm on LinkedIn, it's just not as messy. So I was just kind of venting, and I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of the mess, because listen, the Truck and Hustle platform is all about love. It's all about unity. You'll see a lot of times in my posts, I'll say, we're stronger together. We have to stick together. We have to be unified. We have to work together. You know, um, and especially us as minorities, we're minorities in transportation, so we have to stick together. We have to, make sure that we the silly stuff just has to be put to the side. So that was just me kind of venting, just putting a message out there to anybody who follows me, to just say, hey, we're about unity. We're about building each other up. And if y'all don't stop it, I'm moving to LinkedIn permanently.
We're turning this car around.
I'm,
Now
I'm
for
moving to LinkedIn permanently. I'm packing my bags, but no, it was just really in jest. I'm not going anywhere.
so with I mean, obviously you have a huge social media presence, but for somebody who's new, who's starting up a new trucking company, what are one or two platforms that you would suggest that they get started on?
Well, definitely FreightWaves for one. I mean, you guys are the standard in terms of just education
Oh,
and
thank you.
resources. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, everybody knows that, and whoever doesn't know that, I mean, you guys for sure. And then I would just say, if you really just want to kind of educate yourself, I know one thing that I do that's kind of like a little hack is I use Google Alerts. I use
Mm.
Google Alerts for every single topic that I'm interested in. I'll just put those Google Alerts. Let's say it's last mile, and I'll put it in Google. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's like 1,000 stories popping up on my phone. And then I'll just like, look through them, and one that looks interesting. Obviously, I'm not going to read all of them. I don't have all that time. But if something looks interesting, I mean, that's going to capture the majority of the stories that's happening daily in terms of just educating yourself on what's going on in the industry. So I would always recommend to people, if you want to just learn about different topics, use Google Alerts. If you want to learn about what's going on consistently in the industry in terms of just, spot market and all these different things, FreightWaves is definitely the source, and Truck and Hustle is working to become one of those sources as well. So that's what I would say for right now. But keep it simple, man. I mean, you don't have to go crazy, all over the place. Just find one true source for content and just double down on that, because there's so much different content in so many different places. You have to find that true source and that true North Star, and just kind of stay there and just, dig into that content deeply.
I love it. All right, last question, real quick. Where can people follow Truck and Hustle and all of your work?
Yeah, so you can find Truck and Hustle on all podcast streaming platforms: Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. we're on YouTube. So anywhere, that's streaming podcasts and YouTube, you can find us. You can find me on Instagram. All of my socials are Truck and Hustle. That's TRUCKN, the letter N, HUSTLE. Hustle. Twitter is Truck and Hustle Pod. That's the only one. Somebody got I don't know how they got to it before me, but they did. If you're listening to this, I need that handle. And yeah, obviously the website, truckandhustle.com. We have a lot to come on the website as well. So look out for more things happening. And we're just building the brand. We're taking our time. Anything worth having takes time. And we're just, going slow but steady, and just, trying to really be a force to be reckoned with in terms of just educating people and inspiring people to gain interest and enter into this transportation industry.
Perfect. I love it. It's been wonderful to watch your growth. So I appreciate your time today.
For sure, Blythe. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Signing off. Take care.
Thank you so much. What a great couple of interviews today. This is so much knowledge that's been dropped in just this one episode alone. So I hope you guys will tune in for the following week. If you want to catch a replay of this, check it out on YouTube, on the FreightWaves platform, and we will be back here. I am Blythe Brumley next week at 2 p.m. right here on FreightWaves.